And Ray, what inspired you to pursue science?
Well, just like a lot of kids, I was aspired to be a doctor, right? A lot of us are pre-med, or our parents want us to be doctors growing up. So I always had that feeling that science was really an important part of my life. Just learning about it growing up. But I think really what struck me in genomics. Was in high school. I learned about the Human Genome Project and how we could sequence someone's genome and find out all these insights about our lives, and how to understand diseases and cancer. So that really helped me understand how important just genomics and science in general was important, and why I wanted to study that in college and beyond.
Great. That's awesome to hear. I think knowing the larger impact to the work that you're doing really makes you more motivated and inspired to continue doing the work. So thanks for sharing that. And Vanessa, what if you weren't a scientist, what other passion would you pursue?
If I weren't a scientist, well, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a singer. But then when I grew
Ooh,
up, I realized that I wasn't good at all. So I am glad I didn't do that. Other thing that I wanted to do when I first started high school, I wanted to study psychology. So I think that will have been another path that I might have taken.
awesome. That's great to hear. And you've kind of shared about what you were interested in elementary school and then going into high school. And in the video, you also shared that you started in Mexico for your college experience, and then you actually went to grad school in Canada and France. So can you kind of share what that experience was like in different countries?
Yeah, for sure, it was a great experience. Not an easy decision to make, but when I decided that I wanted to go to grad school, I put in my mind the idea of doing that in another language. So I really like languages, so I wanted to do it not in Spanish, not in English, but another one. And at that point, I had studied a little bit of French and German, so I was looking for opportunities in countries where I could do that. And it wasn't easy. It's just sending a lot of emails, a lot of calls to professors, to research teams that might be interested in my profile. And finally, this professor from Quebec City in Canada, so the French side of Canada, he was interested on my profile, and he accepted me for a PhD. And he was the one who proposed to me to do this double degree program with another university in France. So during my PhD, I was like traveling from one country to the other, and it was a great experience. At the beginning, very difficult. The changes in culture, far away from the family, the language, it was really hard. The first months were really hard, having headaches every single day for forcing my brain to understand what was happening. But it's definitely a great experience.
Thank you for sharing that. I can only imagine my experience is like going from Spanish 3 to Spanish 4 in high school, and where you're strictly talking in the language you're learning. So I can only imagine how being in a new country can be. But that's awesome, that a great experience that you got to have and to share with us. So Ray, you also travel for your position. Can you share a little bit more about what your position is and kind of share what some of the exciting places you've been?
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I'm a field application scientist. So at Illumina, that entails going out and visiting customers. So there are hundreds of field application scientists across the globe who go out and have a specific territory. They work in specific countries or specific areas of the United States, for example. And we go visit customers. We train them on our instrumentation, our chemistry, our software solutions. So we're a jack of all trades. We learn everything that Illumina provides, and we share that information with our customers. So for me, I've been able to, in my career at Illumina, travel all across the globe. So I originally started in Illumina in Boston. So I visited customers around there for the first 5 years of my career. And then the last few years, I've lived in San Diego, so traveling and visiting customers in the Southern California region But recently, in the last few years, I've worked with customers in Latin America. So I visited Costa Rica, I visited Peru, I visited Argentina. But I think the most interesting place that I visited recently is Sao Paulo in Brazil. Illumina actually has offices in Brazil. We have FAS and field application scientists and field service engineers and salespeople who live in Brazil and support our customers there. So I went there to train a customer for 4 days. It was a long training. It was on our library prep chemistry as well as our instrumentation, the NovaSeq specifically. So I was there for 4 days, 9 to 5, working with that customer. But every day, my Brazil team, we went out and had a lot to drink, a lot to eat afterwards, and just learning the culture. I really loved spending time with my team there. But after the training was done, I spent a whole weekend just visiting Brazil, seeing the sights, and it was during the time of Carnival. So I was actually able to see a party, an outdoor party going on just by walking around Sao Paulo that weekend. So what I find about Illumina is that it gives you that work-life balance a lot, and spending a few days after I travel to see the sites, to understand the culture, has been a real inspiration for me, and really helped me just be able to see things that I won't be able to see just being in San Diego.
That's an amazing opportunity. Going to Carnival is definitely on my bucket list, so exciting to hear that. We might have to touch base after this to hear more of your tips and where to travel to. But let's go over to Kwabe. So you, similar to Ray, you also work with customers in the field. So can you kind of explain what your day-to-day is like and what really inspired you to pursue a position like this?
Yeah, so looking, I kind of what inspired me to do this. Coming from an engineering background, I spent a lot of time during internships and co-ops in the lab, doing testing, working on CAT scanners. I interned at Philips for a while, and I started to interact a lot more with some of the sales folks. And I had a lot of friends who were in medical sales and some family members that were in sales. And I really enjoyed the lifestyle that they had, being able to travel to see customers, being able to still be technical, to be able to speak to the products that they sold, but being able to kind of really drive home those products into their customer base. So I started to gain an interest with that and more of the business side of things. So I really wanted to develop my business acumen. So after taking a sales role for a number of years, I really was a lot more tactical. It was, you have a product, you sell it, you work with your customers. But I really wanted to learn more about how the engine runs, as I mentioned. And, I just learning the strategic side to it. It's one thing to actually make a product and sell it, but how do you do that? And how do you do that on a global scale? So that's really kind of what drove me to pursue this role at Illumina. So in my day-to-day, I work with the global channel partners, and as I mentioned, our channel partners are in parts of the world that our direct teams aren't. So a lot of emerging markets like Latin America, Africa, South Asia, China. So I work closely with our regional teams internally, and then also our channel partners to look at ways to help them sell most effectively. So whether it's creating programs, organizing training, collaborating with our teams internally just to make sure that they have all the resources and tools. That's kind of what my day-to-day entails. So a lot of fun.
Great to hear. So it sounds like before you were in this channel enablement position, you were also in sales. So similar to the question I asked Ray, where is like the most exciting place that you've got to go to for work?
Good question. And I was hoping in my current role, I was supposed to be traveling a lot internationally. So I had a trip booked to Singapore, which would have been great, but that was right before COVID started. So we had to cancel that one. But in my previous role, I supported mainly, again, the West Coast and Mexico. So I've been all over the country, probably to 35 states in that previous role. But I think the place I really enjoyed the most is Tijuana, Mexico. Just learning the culture, learning the people, Just, the food was amazing. I really enjoyed the culture aspect of it. So being able to drive across the border, I felt like a local just driving across the border in San Diego and interacting with the folks there. So that was probably the most exciting experience.
That's amazing. I really want to see everyone's like passport stamps now. Um, so we've heard a lot about how you can travel outside of the country or even within the states for positions at Illumina. But let's also hear from Vanessa. So you work on site here in San Diego in a lab. So can you kind of tell us what your day-to-day is like, and how has the pandemic kind of changed your normal day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. So unfortunately, I don't have the opportunity of traveling with this job. I mean, I have traveled, in fact, but only to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, because we work very close together with an engineering team in there. And it's mainly to visit labs and to get trained on certain tools that they have there. And they also come here so they can get trained by us. So my day to day is I spend 50 to 70 time of the time in the lab. So I work in different labs depending of the kind of experiment that I am doing. So sometimes I will be in a chemistry lab, just working with different solutions to do chemical reactions. But some other times I will be in labs that just have several tools, like for example, very powerful microscopes that we use to analyze our samples. And I do a lot of that. I do a lot of analysis of the surfaces that we have, as I mentioned in the video, in our flow cells that go into the sequencer. So yeah, most of the time I will be in the lab, and then the rest of the time, well, we do have meetings for planning, for discussing. We present very often. We have to present our data to the team, and also sometimes we need a lot of time to analyze the data. So you spend some time in the lab, and then you have to go back to your desk, and then sometimes experiment that it was just an hour can take you like 5 hours to analyze the data and to understand what was happening, and what did you get from the microscope or from the different instruments that we are using to get the data. So yeah, I think that will be it most of the time in the lab, and then sometimes analysis, presenting, discussing with people, a lot of discussion. We always have to be in constant communication with the whole team, and it's very important to get feedback from everybody, because we all plan together the next experiments and we all discuss together the result that we get.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And so even though you're not traveling, you are traveling between buildings, it sounds like, in order to better understand and have access to the instrumentation that you need for your experiment. So that's amazing to hear. So we do have a question for the audience from the audience, and I do want to again stress that if any of the audience have any questions for the panelists or in regards to Skype a Scientist, feel free to drop it in the chat, the Zoom chat that is. So our question from the audience is, and this will be for all the panelists to answer, is what university or college did you go to? And I'm actually going to add to that and ask, why did you choose to go to that college? So let's start with Kwabe.
So I attended the University of Toledo in Toledo, Ohio. For me, attending there, I really wanted to study biomedical engineering, and that was one of the schools that I was applying to that had that program. Some other schools I was interested in didn't have that program in particular. I had an uncle that worked there, so he vouched for me to come, and some friends that were going as well too. But they had a strong engineering program, so I thought that it was a good move, and they gave me the most money to attend.
Financial aid is a very big factor. I actually chose my college, St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, specifically because I got a full tuition scholarship. So totally understand you there, Kwabe. Vanessa.
Yeah, I also have an story of full tuition explanation. So when I was in high school, my school had this agreement with a university in another city. It's in Monterrey. The school is called Tec de Monterrey, and so they will give full tuition for one student per generation of the high school, and I had the opportunity of winning this scholarship. So everything was covered, and I was also able to get on a scholarship for the lodging, which was a big help because otherwise my family couldn't even afford to send me to this university, which is a private university in Mexico. So that's how I got there, and it was very a great opportunity for me because I wanted to be a chemist. And in my city, in Tijuana, at that moment, we didn't have exactly the same program that I wanted to follow. So I had the opportunity of really studying a bachelor in chemistry by going to Monterrey. And then so as I mentioned, I went to Canada. The university is called Laval University, and that I went there. As I said, I was looking for French speaking universities or German, and this one specifically, I really liked the research group that I found. So they were focused on materials for health, and this is really what I wanted to do. And I really enjoyed seeing in their website that they had a very international team. They had people from Iran, from Colombia, from Brazil, from Spain, from Indonesia, and I really like that because I've been always interested in learning more about cultures and languages. So it was like a whole package for me. And also, it was in the same continent as my family, so that helped too, instead of going to Europe. So yeah, and then as I mentioned, I had the opportunity of doing this double degree program with France.
Great. You sound very international. That's an amazing experience. And also to hear about the scholarship. So one student out of every generation. Was that what I heard correctly?
Yes.
Awesome. That
Mhm.
must have been a very competitive scholarship to apply for, and congratulations. Ray,
Thank
which university did you go to?
Yes, so I went to Boston University, in Boston, of course. And being from Chicago, I always loved living in cities, right? I love the international flavor of being in a city, the many different types of people that are in a city. So I really wanted to have that in my college education as well. And Boston was very, as I said, I was also pre-med, and Boston University had a good medical school. So that's really why I chose it. And of course, they gave me the most money. So that really was the kicker of all three, was the fact that they gave me the most money. But I did want that international flavor. Boston had that. And of course, being in a big city was really important to me.
Amazing. Great to hear. And while we're on the subject of kind of choosing where you want to go to outside of high school, we may have some audiences that are also at this same question, but maybe after college. So I'm going to ask actually the entire panel. Kwabi, did you choose to go to grad school, and if not, what influenced that decision?
I did not actually. I kind of went straight into the workforce after graduating from school.
Mhm.
I landed the job in medical sales, and I thought it was a good fit, an opportunity for me to learn quite a bit, just people skills, negotiation, business strategy, things like that. So that's kind of the path I took. Something I'm still thinking about, and may do in the coming future. So I've always dreamed of getting my MBA. So that's something I'm thinking about doing in the near future.
That's great to hear. So it's good to highlight that you don't necessarily have to continue going to school. Sometimes work experience is more valued. So let's go ahead and ask the same question to Vanessa.
Yeah, so in my case, I mentioned I did decide to go to grad school, but something that I can share is that when I first finished my bachelor, I wasn't thinking at all on continuing on science. I finished like very tired, very tired from my bachelor, and I was like, this is not for me. I just want to go to the industry. I'm gonna work in manufacturing, and that's what I want to do. So I started working in manufacturing of medical devices, and the first months I was really enjoying everything what I was learning and stuff, but very fast happened that I was missing research. I was missing the lab, and I think it helped me to understand. Working there helped me to understand that I really wanted to pursue and study more, because I was working on manufacturing of cardiovascular devices, so devices that go to the heart. And when I was working in the manufacturing, I was really thinking that I wanted to work on the materials that were used to build that. I wasn't I was a quality engineer, and I really liked, in fact, quality systems, and I was enjoying that. But my interest was on the quality of the materials themselves and not the final product. So I decided that I needed that, and that's why I went to this lab that they were studying really materials to build medical devices, which is where I got specialized. So that's what the main reason why I decided to go to grad school.
Awesome. That's also a great piece of advice to take based on what you learned about yourself and about what you were working on in your work experience. That's what motivated you to go to grad school. And Ray?
So my path in my career is definitely not a straight line to where I am today. So I actually started off in a PhD program after college, after I went to school at BU. But after a year, this is a biomedical research, like a lot of you who are looking to go to grad school or thinking about for the future. And after a year, I decided it wasn't for me. I felt that the research lifestyle, working at the bench, was not something that I wanted to do. So I made the decision to leave my PhD program. Luckily enough, though, I was able to start at a startup company in Boston called Agincourt Bioscience, and it was a new company, and so I was able to just learn different aspects of the role. So whether it's customer service, whether it's R&D. So I definitely worked in different roles in industry when I first started out, and that led me down that path to industry. So after I spent 10 years at Agincourt, and it was bought by a company called Beckman Coulter, I started my career at Illumina. So, and even today, things always change, right? So I got my MBA while I was at Beckman Coulter because they paid for it, right? It's really nice to be in an industry that values education and will pay for your classes at night, of course. So I have my MBA, but for now, being a field application scientist was something that I'm really passionate about. Really passionate about industry and helping find cures for cancer, finding cures for different diseases at Illumina. So even though I do have my MBA, it shows you that there is this nonlinear path to where you are today, and you could do both. You could go into industry, you can go into academia. It really is based on your path and what you find your passion.
I couldn't say it any better, Ray. I think also the decision that you made after your first year in your PhD was also a very brave decision, because I've known several other colleagues that were like, I just stuck it out and now I don't like it. I don't know what to do. So kudos to you for recognizing that early on and making the decision that was best for your career path. So we have another question from the audience, and this will be for all of the panelists. What is some advice you would give to someone striving to be in your position? I think, Ray, since you just finished, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Well, so to be a field application scientist, if you strive to be something like me, I think it takes soft skills and hard skills, right? So the technical skills about learning about genomics, understanding the chemistry, understanding the science, because we spend most of our time troubleshooting. If there's a customer issue that comes up, whether it's a down instrument or their library prep isn't working, we spend some time figuring out what is the issue and trying to resolve that for them. So, getting a degree in biochemistry or molecular biology, working in a lab, right? So going into a lab at a university and starting a project there might be a good start. Working with the core lab in your university that does sequencing, that might be a way to get that experience. But a lot of it also is the soft skills, as I said. Learning about how to actively listen to a customer, finding out what they really have concerns about. And understanding that you may not know everything about the solution they require. So finding the right people. So understanding the sales perspective, understanding the perspective of marketing, understanding the perspective of customer service, getting that entire continuum to really help the customer. So I really do think it's important to understand communication, to understand the customer dynamics, as well as the technical dynamics, really help get you to where you need to be to be a field application scientist.
Thank you. So it sounds like seeking opportunities in the areas you're interested in, as well as honing those soft skills, communication and critical thinking or problem solving are key in your position and have what helped you get as far as you have. Vanessa, do you have anything to add to this great list that Ray's already started for us?
I do, because I think when you want to work on research, as in the same way that Ray decided that he didn't want to do that, I also think it's super brave, and it is important to realize if we want to do something or not. And in the case of research, something that we do need is we need to be a lot of we need a lot of patience and we need a lot of perseverance. Unfortunately, when we are working in the lab, if we do 20 experiments within a month, just one of them will work and the other 19 don't work. So you really need to have a lot of patience and do your perseverance to stay there, because you just have to take all the data, analyze it, and realize why it didn't work, and then try again, try something different, change something. And this is what we do all the time. We get the data, okay, it didn't work as I was expecting, what should I do now? And this can can be very frustrating. I have to recognize that mainly at the beginning, it may be very frustrating, and we see it here whenever we have new people in the company, we have to help them to get through this frustration and when we start, because it can be very difficult. So that's one thing. It's not I don't think it's a secret. So everybody should know that we need that when we work as scientists and in research. That's one thing. And the other thing is that just to echo a little bit what Ray was saying, work on your network since now. Talk to people. Look for internships, because several companies or in the academia, you can go for a summer, work there for a couple of months, and you have an idea, right? You can have an idea of how do you like to work in the bench. Since you are very young, you can just help with little things in the lab, but you're going to see how things work out, and you can have a better decision, and open your LinkedIn account, and just send a little message to people that you think they do stuff that you are interested on, so you can learn more about the day to day, so you can have a better idea if you are interested on that or not.
Amazing. Thank you, Vanessa. So it sounds like you were saying patience, perseverance, as well as network. Kwabi, I'm actually going to switch it up and ask you a different question. This one's from the audience. Did your university integrate business courses into your biomedical engineering degree as colleges in California do for biotechnology majors, such as accounting, marketing, management, etc.?
They did not, and that's something I wish they would have. You know, just thinking of basic financial literacy, but then also thinking about non-traditional science-based roles. At my school, we had a mandatory co-op program, so you had to do 3 semesters of co-ops, and by virtue of being in the Midwest, a lot of the companies there were medical device companies or manufacturing companies or industrial manufacturing companies. And a lot of the focus was quality engineering or process engineering, whatever it may be. But I wish they would have done a better job of opening up, more opportunities, so including business courses into our curriculum, things of that really would have kind of brought a well-rounded approach to what's possible. So.
Awesome. Okay, that's great to hear. So maybe even if like a minor in business or finance or something, that could be a potential avenue for students to pursue if they want to kind of dip their toes in the business side of biotech. Also, same question to you, Kwabi. What advice do you have for students interested in the business side of biotech, excuse me?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, I think, and Ray and Vanessa both touched on it, is being open. Like I was mentioning, a lot of times, you kind of get pigeonholed into this is what you should do, or your teacher tells you this is what you should do, your mom tells you this is what you should do, your friends tell you. But I think, as you do your internships and co-ops and things like that, explore different avenues, whether it's research, whether it's, an opportunity to work in supply chain, whether it's an opportunity to work in, in the field or whatever it may be. I think getting your hands dirty is really what kind of opens you up to that, to what's possible, really. So being open, I think, is that, and then starting to really network. I think that's the big thing. I think, when I was going through college, LinkedIn was just kind of becoming a thing. And I've seen how it's evolved, and I see how it can be used for good. I think most people are receptive to inquiries. So, if you were to reach out and say, hey, I would like to learn more about your role or what you do, most people are really open to hearing about that. And so I highly encourage that. I've had a number of people reach out to me, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I think, just giving people that different exposure really helps them see what's possible.
Great to hear. So again, seeking opportunities and making sure you're getting that exposure that you're interested or in areas that you're interested in to make your career decisions. So we have another question from the audience, and this will be for Ray. At a high level and briefly, can you explain how next generation sequencing works? The person who asked this question just did a unit about genetics in their biology class, and they learned about DNA sequencing.
So yeah, to make it as simple as possible, next generation sequencing, or Illumina sequencing specifically, because that's what we do at Illumina, of course, really is a highly parallel, high throughput sequencing of individual DNA molecules. So basically, if you have DNA, let's say from your genome, and you want to sequence it, Illumina allows you to highly sequence that genome at high coverage really quickly in the span of 24 to 48 hours. So you basically take your DNA, you chop it up, we create what we call a library that hybridizes onto a flow cell. That flow cell is then put in, a flow cell is a glass slide. That is put onto our sequencer. Then we add chemicals to do a sequencing process called SBS, or sequencing by synthesis. And by adding individual bases of DNA to that DNA molecule that's on the flow cell, then the instrument, whether it's a large instrument that we sell like the NovaSeq, or a small instrument like the iSeq 100, can read the chemical that was bound to that flow cell and see if it's an A, T, C, or G. And we do that in a massive parallel fashion where we're sequencing hundreds of thousands to millions to billions of DNA molecules all at once. That allows us to sequence the human genome within 24 to 48 hours. And then we take that data, we align it to the genome, we look for variants or mutations, like what we've read for COVID. We have COVID variants that we look at using our sequencers. And then we determine from that information whether you might have a disease, whether you might have cancer, to determine many different aspects, forensics, for example. So there's many different applications that can come from our Illumina sequencers. And it all comes from that individual DNA that we purify from ourselves, from plants, from different animals, from forensic sites, or from COVID, for example. So there are many different applications that can be used with next generation sequencing.
That's amazing and a beautiful summary. So I'm not even going to try and recap. So if you missed it, go back to our Illumina booth here at the festival, and you'll be recording because that was a great summation. So we have another question kind of about our technology, and this will be for Vanessa. So can you briefly explain what kinds of technology do you develop? And Ray already kind of touched on where they're used in the real world. So for example, forensics or cancer diagnostics. So if there's anything else you would like to add to that, Vanessa.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. So, in fact, Ray said that the flow cell is just glass. But the truth is that we do a lot of work in that glass. A lot, a lot. If it was only glass, then I wouldn't have a job. So, there's a lot. So, for sure, it's glass. It's totally true. We have glass. And then what we do in our team is that we modify this glass with different molecules and different. So we use polymers, we use metals, we use oxides, really a variety of chemical molecules that we use to modify this surface. And what we do is that, as Ray said, the your library prep, your DNA in your library prep will react with these molecules that we put on the surface, and all this the sequencing reaction will happen on the surface. Okay, that's where all the reactions happen. So what we do in the technology that we develop, we are really focused on improving these materials. As you, if you remembered when I started talking about the how I decided to go to grad school, it was because I was interested on the materials. How do we choose these materials? How do we know that they are good enough? So this is, I keep doing that, but now for for genetics applications. So how do we know what to put in that glass? How do we know which is the best material that we can use? And then how do we understand the modifications that we are doing so we can predict how we'll work in sequencing? So the idea, the objective is to do sequencing faster and cheaper. As Ray said, now is 24 to 48 hours. We want to reduce that a lot, and we want to make it cheaper so more people have access to that. So that's the technology we developed in my team.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. So another question that we have from the audience that I'm going to answer is, um, how do we get a position at Illumina, and what are the Illumina internships? So I was actually an intern in 2017 at Illumina, and so this was in between my fourth and fifth year of my PhD, and I got to work in product development, similar to actually, I think Vanessa, you work in research. Technology development. But either way, I worked in development. Afterwards, I went back to school, I finished, and then when I graduated in 2018, I started to apply for full-time positions. And I was hired here at Illumina in October of 2018. So really the Illumina internship is what allowed me to, one, put Illumina on my radar and helped me realize I love genetics and what our company is working towards. Just for everyone on the line, Illumina internships open up in the fall for next summer of 2022. This year, so 2021, the internship will be virtual, and there's a potential that in 2022 that it will be in person. So if you are curious about if you are curious about what it is like to work at Illumina, definitely consider applying for one of the Illumina internships. And all the positions can range from the whole gambit of what we're seeing here today: research and development, operations, finance, and different. Okay, so we have a bit more minutes. Ask our final, if there's any more questions in the chat, please go ahead and ask them now. And one question I have for all of our panelists to answer is, actually, I'm going to take this question from the audience. What kind of salary can we expect of the field today? So definitely feel a range. We don't have to put that all out there. Ray, you want to start for us? As a field application, your salary?
Yeah, my salary. Okay, so the salary is different depending on your, of course, experience, right? So I'm a staff field application scientist, so that's kind of the most senior level of the application scientist. So when you first start out, I would expect, it depends on many different factors, as I said, but maybe in the $70,000-$80,000 range. And again, don't count me on that, because I really don't know what it is today. I knew what it was 11 years ago when I first started as a field application scientist, to the six figures, low six figures. So that's what I would guess what it is. What it is today. But yeah, as you grow with the company, there's always room to increase your salary and to change roles at Illumina. So that's one thing I wanted to call out on. And so that's where it started, and you could always move on to other fields at Illumina.
Great. So it sounds like, just to repeat the question, it was what kind of salaries are we expecting in each of these fields represented here today? As Ray mentioned, it really depends on your educational and work experience. So for a field application scientist starting out, 70 to 80. Vanessa, will you briefly tell us kind of the expected salary for a scientist in the lab?
Yes. So the first thing, the position of what we call scientist one, it's normally you need to have or a PhD or experience that is similar to what we
Mhm.
will learn in a PhD. And so I can talk for that position. And I think again, as Red said, is this is when I started, but I started 2 years ago. So I think scientist one was in the range of the 90,000, and then from there you go up, right? Normally it will be like 10 to 15 or even 20,000 more after each promotion, depending on the promotion. And so with the less experience or a master degree or a bachelor, you can still work as a scientist. In the We have 4 positions before getting to scientist one. We have research associate, we had associate scientist. So for those positions, it will really depend on your experience. Mhm.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And Kwabe, can you briefly tell us the expected range for someone starting in your area?
Yeah, so for myself, I work in the commercial operations side of the business. So uh, again, like Ray said, don't quote me on this, and I'm relatively new, so I don't have a whole breadth of experience as to kind of what the salary bands are. But similar to Ray, I am a staff employee as well too. So coming in from working in sales, it kind of brought some level of experience knowing how to interact with distribution. So I would say in this range, the high 90s to like low six figures, I think, is probably kind of where this role entails. But again, this is more of a staff or senior role. But I think one thing I would like to comment on is just kind of considering factors outside of salary. A lot of companies offer stock, a lot of companies offer things like that that potentially can outweigh salary. So, I think as you look to join the workforce, not getting so hung up on that salary. Obviously, it's important, especially in high cost cities. But thinking and looking at stock options and things like that too. You hear stories about people who work at Amazon or who came in when stock was $50 and now it's 3,000. So thinking about that too, I think, is really important as well.
That's great to hear. So there's a wide range of your educational and work experience. Don't get discouraged because there are additional areas to consider when applying for positions at a biotech company. So it does sound like we have a question from the studio. We want to go ahead and share that one.
Hey guys, welcome back. What a great panel. Thank you guys for being with us. I had one question to lead into you guys, which is there a moment?
Radical
This is for all the panelists. Oh, Beverly can't hear me. Hang on one second. Let me change something. Sorry, everybody else could hear me, just not you, Beverly. I have one question for the panel. When did you know science was for you? Like, what was there a moment in your school where you just went from like, yeah, I go to science class every day, or yeah, science is cool, and so is reading, and so is art, and so is everything else. But like, was there one moment where science went to you, or where you were like, wow, science is really for me?
Great. And we do only have about 1 minute, so if we can all briefly answer in 30 seconds, that would be great. Kwabi, let's start with you.
Yeah, for me, I would say it was early on in elementary school, probably. I really was always fond of math and science as a whole, and doing experiments. It sounds kind of weird, but like dissections, even in high school, things like that. Just kind of seeing the body, seeing the anatomy, and kind of learning more about that. Uh, Really kind of stimulated my mind to learn more about the body and kind of impacts to it.
Vanessa, what was your aha moment?
It was definitely not when I was a child. As I said, I wanted to be a singer and a psychologist. So for me, it was a professor, a chemistry professor in high school. she really pushed me a lot because she thought that I could be good in the field, and she really convinced me to start taking some classes in high school that were focused on chemistry for biological applications that she knew I was interested on. And then when I took those classes, I was like, okay, yes, you're right, I want to do this.
Awesome. And Ray?
So when I was working in a lab, just a lab technician, cleaning glassware, general lab upkeep, working on my first lab project, and doing some PCR reactions, and they're all failing, and not understanding why, and then getting that aha moment, like, oh, I figured out why my reactions were failing, and getting those results, those positive results, that positive reinforcement, show, hey, now I can move on to the next step and to the next step after that. So just being able to, having that independent thought of what I can do to resolve the failures, and seeing that there's success or light at the end of the tunnel made me realize, yeah, I can do this.
Amazing. I think that also highlights what Vanessa was talking about, perseverance as well. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. So I do want to extend a huge thank you to my colleagues, Kwabe, Vanessa, and Ray. I feel like the audience has taken a lot from this. Similarly, I would like to point everyone to our Illumina booth here on San Diego Festival's website so you can learn more about the scientists that we talked to today, as well as just learn more about the products that Illumina puts out there. And finally, again, this was a collaboration with Skype as Scientists. So again, that's an organization that connects learners with scientists all over the world. So feel free to reach out to them to learn more about how you can have a scientist visit your classroom, your group, or just talk to you.